So back in 2020, there were only 2 IPs which Kaiyo had which were of any note. One being for boys, and that was the Ultraman cards. And the second was the Fairy Dream Leaf Lori, which was a 12-year-old Japanese cartoon translated into Chinese. And even then, like, most of the actual fans of that show had grown up considerably since that time. So it was a strange thing that, like, young girls were actually interested in these cards. But they were the 2 main franchises available before My Little Pony. Now here's a strange thing, and I can't really confirm it, but when I went hunting for the SGR-007, which is the Grail card of My Little Pony, and very hard to get hold of, when I was trading for the card, I met someone who was insisting that they got their card during 2020, despite the fact that actually that card comes from Moon 1, or was a part of Moon 1 sets of cards, and Moon 1 didn't come out until November of 2021. So I've never managed to confirm this, but it seems from another trader that they were teasing MLP at shows around 2020. So around this point, obviously, from what I heard, the guy who was actually in charge of Hasbro died. Another guy comes in power. He doesn't really like MLP, from what I've heard. And then what happened is that G4 was coming towards its end. And what Hasbro did was, let's flog this knackered horse off in Asia to make a quick buck while it seems that it's still popular. This would eventually turn around and bite them in the arse in the long run, but this is what happened, and this was the beginning of the wave. I myself was working for a gaming company, and these people just didn't know what they were doing. They had no clue, and dealing with them was an absolutely frustrating nightmare. So I can imagine what, like, Hasbro was during that time, because everything from the outside looks the same as dealing with bureaucratic, pencil-pushing, retarded boomers. Now back to the facts. Only 2 boxes were launched during 2021. First in June, Rainbow 1, and then Moon in November. But with everything that was going on and all the other products, really it didn't stand out too much. Yes, there were some who started a little fad, but it really was under the radar, to be fair. Girls were very much still entrenched in the Fairy Leaf Princess, and boys were still very entrenched in the Ultraman cards. Now, whatever traction it gained during this year was about to evaporate at the start of next year. So for Chinese New Year, I was actually in Zhongzhou, Henan, and we were hearing lots of sort of rumors about things in Wuhan and things being locked down. We realized something was up, and essentially we got the last train out of Zhongzhou back to Shanghai before the lockdowns. The very few days we got back, that's when Shanghai shut down around March, and the lockdowns didn't end until June. So you can imagine that this was going to have a huge impact on Rainbow 1 and Moon 1. Essentially, Moon 1 got kneecapped, and a lot of traders ended up just like stashing them away for a rainy day. And because of that, some people have lots of boxes kicking around, and they're worth 10,000 RMB now on the second-hand market. It wasn't until September of that year that Moon 2 was released, and Rainbow 2 in November. restrictions didn't really lift until December that year. When the restrictions were suddenly dropped, there was a massive wave of infections during that December, to the point that myself and my daughter were living in my wife's place of business for a few weeks to avoid coming home, because my wife's mother had become infected. So we spent that Christmas that year in an office. So sales of all 4 products didn't do well during that time. On top of that, you had a lot of like factories and processing warehouses being disrupted because many migrant workers decided to go back to their hometowns because they didn't exactly enjoy being locked down in the big cities and not being able to get out. On top of that, many of my sort of millionaire friends, they really had 2 choices, and that was to lock everyone in and keep them running their factories under strict guidelines, or to shut down until they could reopen. And this had an effect on a lot of companies' means of production, hence why there is such issues with Moon 2 and Rainbow. Speaking from myself, I only bought single packs during that time because there were more important things to be dealing with than collecting cards. The first whole box set I did buy was a Rainbow 2 box set, but it wasn't until the following year. So at the beginning of this year, really, what happened was it was the blame game. Everyone was pointing fingers, and what happened was is that internationally, many companies pulled their production outside of China. It hit China hard, including the disruption to global trade. My millionaire friends decided to take their factories outside of China, if not move out of China, and take their wealth with them, like a lot of other millionaires around the world. But to the average person in China who stayed, including myself, it was a very painful start to the year, full of paranoia everywhere internationally, where I would hear violence being committed on Chinese people, and for myself, also facing a lot of discrimination here in China, not by the state, but by individuals. So Moon 3 comes out in March, but it was really bad timing. Stardust then comes out in July. And during that same time, everything was overshadowed by the introduction of a new fad, a new IP called Egg Party or Danzai. And essentially what happened is that this coming out took over everything previously. So people were switching to this new fad, and it was everywhere. It was like on pizza boxes, stationery. Kai was doing cards. There was a game as well. It was everywhere. Acted like an avalanche on top of whatever was there left of MLP. Let's Go 1 comes out in November, and it really isn't really until sort of the end of the year where things calm down and we start really thinking about the future. The hope starts to begin with MLP again from Moon 4.